This might be a controversial take, but hear me out. I am all for normalizing mental health, mental illness, and struggles with mental health. That needs to be normalized because it's something that everyone struggles with. But what I've noticed with the normalization of mental health is also the simplification of mental illness and mental disorders. And what I mean by that is now mental illness seems so much more simple than it actually is. And it's made it more accessible to people in a way where, like, you know, you'll see something on TikTok like 5 signs you have ADHD. 1, you go to the kitchen, you forget what was there. Like, that pisses me off. Because I have ADHD and I find it so stupid that you're trying to turn symptoms into just little quirks that everyone does. Literally everyone in the world does. Because what that's doing is discrediting the actual struggles that people with ADHD go through. Because now you hear people saying, I think everyone has a little bit of ADHD. Or now you're hearing people self-diagnosing themselves with different things. And that's not how it works. I understand that some people don't have the resources or the ability to go see a licensed professional, let's say a psychiatrist, to get properly diagnosed. But that just means that you can find resources to help with your specific issues. But don't go around telling everyone that I have ADHD, I have this, I have that, when you weren't professionally diagnosed. And to make it make more sense, I'll apply it to physical health. Let's say you think you have cancer, right? But you don't have the resources to go to an oncologist, a doctor of cancer. You search up the symptoms online, you're just like, I have that symptom, I have that symptom, I have that symptom. Okay, I'm going to go around telling everyone that I have cancer now. No, nobody does that. At least your average person will not do that. And that's why I find it kind of ridiculous that now people are just scrolling through TikTok seeing random information about ADHD, which is more often than not is misinformation about ADHD. And they're trying to diagnose themselves saying, oh yeah, I have ADHD when they've never been diagnosed. And what happens is people will start to claim that disorder, right? They'll start to claim, I have this, I have that. But they're being fed, more often than not, they're being fed misinformation. So when they claim that they have something based off of misinformation, they're going to further the spread of misinformation. And that's why you see now people are always saying mental health matters, mental illness, like awareness, etc., etc., etc. But when someone actually shows genuine signs of mental illness or certain disorders, people turn away from that because there are other people who are claiming that they have said illness, said disorder, who have never actually been properly educated or never have actually been properly diagnosed, that are spreading misinformation about what it is, when in fact it's a neurotypical quirk that they have that they're trying to turn to neurodivergence. Yeah, okay, that's all, bye. I'm coming clean. If you followed my content for a while, you know I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in my mid-teens. This means that I'd have phases of extreme happiness called manic episodes and phases of extreme sadness called depressive episodes, and each of them lasted around a couple weeks. Even though it was very obvious to me whenever I was in a depressive episode, manic episodes were much more complex and it was much harder to tell when I was in one. So oftentimes I didn't know the difference between a manic episode and healing. Throughout my battle with mental health, I think one of my biggest insecurities was the way that I looked. Basically, I always thought that I was super unattractive, and I would often spiral about this whenever I was in a depressive episode. A telltale sign of me being in a manic episode, however, was if I got super obsessed with anything related to self-care or self-improvement. For example, I'd get really obsessed with the gym, I'd post about it everywhere, I'd talk about it all the time, I'd be controlling my diet obsessively. Another example is skincare. I was so obsessed with it to the point where I had like a 20-step skincare routine, and I'd have to wake up at like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. before going to school to do all the steps of my skincare routine. My natural skin is very sensitive, so it would often leave my skin like peeling, itching, irritated, etc. It got to the point where my obsession would affect my work and studies because I was so obsessed. And this whole obsession was in the pursuit of beauty in this tiis ganda culture. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. Whenever I got into these episodes, I'd always think that all of this work and effort would be worth it because eventually I'd reach this beauty standard that I set for myself. I'd think that it was me healing and that I'd finally be happy, and then I'd hit a depressive episode again and I'd feel like I went all the way back to where I started. I'd become depressed again, I'd lose the hyperfixation, and I'd be left feeling even worse than before. It was just this constant cycle of false hope followed by an even bigger depressive episode. But why do we go to such lengths for the sake of beauty in this tiis ganda culture? My point is, you don't need to sacrifice your sanity just to feel beautiful. I've taken several steps in my life towards better self-care habits that aren't as harsh and aren't as obsessive. For one, I found exercise methods that I found fun and I enjoy in my free time. Instead of becoming overly obsessed with something I don't necessarily enjoy doing, I found a hobby related to exercise, which is why I rock climb. And in that same strain, instead of putting all these harsh chemicals on my skin hoping for the best, I did my research and I found Tunay. I love these products. Tunay is a skincare brand that helps me feel beautiful the clean and safe way. They use all natural ingredients in their products, which feels so good on my sensitive skin. They don't do any animal testing, they don't use any animal ingredients, and they don't use any kind of harsh chemicals or fragrances that could irritate your skin. So not only is Tunay good for your skin, but it's also very good for the environment, which in turn is good for your conscience. And if you're wondering, this is their nose Bible, basically everything they don't have in their products. With that being said, I want to know about you guys. What tiis ganda things have you done? Let me know in the comments. Love you guys. Bye-bye. It's June 2025 and I'm alive and well. When I was 12 years old, I got my first diagnosis for mental illness, and for most of my teen years, it was an uphill battle to get healthy. Recently, I found a video I filmed at one of the darkest points of my life, and I wanted to share it with you guys, not for pity, but to remind you all that it does get better. It is March 12th, Sunday, 2023, and if you're watching this, I feel like a conversation a lot of people don't want to have and aren't ready to have yet is how misunderstood and misrepresented feminism is. Like, one, there's this whole trend on social media of my man better pay for this for me and pay for that for me, and he better do this and that for me because it's girl power, princess treatment, feminism, whatever. It's not feminism, and it's actually not women empowerment. It's misogyny repackaged into a pink sparkly bow because you are perpetuating the idea that a woman must be dependent on a man for resources, for means of living. That being said, you are allowed to have preferences in a relationship. You're allowed to prefer a man who will pay for you, or you're allowed to prefer a man who's rich, but don't put it under this disguise of feminism and girl power, because it's not. If you were a feminist, you would not believe that it's a man's role to provide for you. You would believe that you are supposed to provide for yourself and you can be independent as a woman. But again, don't get me wrong, I like when someone treats me out for dinner. I like when someone pays for me, but I won't expect it. I won't say that it's their obligation, it's their role. A lot of people are going to call me a pick-me or hate on me for saying this, but I go into all my dates expecting to pay for half the bill. Whether or not they decide to pay for the full thing is up to them, but I will not hold it against them if they want to split the bill. Another thing is feminism and how it's misrepresented through publications and social media. We'll get a very accomplished and empowered woman, we'll paint her face in makeup, put her in a flashy outfit, retouch her face, cinch her waist in on Photoshop, make her tits bigger, call her a girl boss, and the day is done. That's feminism for the day. The same thing that happened 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 60 years ago, etc. Except this time we're calling her a girl boss, and so it's feminism. No, we're again just supporting misogynistic systems under the idea of, oh, feminism. Here's an example. This is Michael Phelps. He's a legend in the Olympics. We all know who Michael Phelps is. And of course, his magazine covers are showing his merit, are showing his accomplishments. And we go to Simone Biles, and yes, we do have some of her in gymnastics, but then the first two that pop up are her in a dress, her in makeup. It supports this idea that a woman needs to be beautiful, needs to be all done up just to be taken seriously. But of course, she is allowed to feel beautiful. She's allowed to look beautiful. I'm not saying she isn't. But the fact that these are the first few images that come up when you search Simone Biles magazine cover compared to Michael Phelps magazine cover says a lot. Why can't we just celebrate her based off her merit without having to highlight her beauty and her femininity? She's an insane athlete and she needs to be recognized as such. It's all these ideas of my man better pay for me and also different things like that, like the magazine cover, that's causing people to have pushback on feminism because they think it's useless. And it's not. I think feminism is still very much needed in today's society. It's just so misunderstood and so misrepresented that people are starting to resent it because it's seen as abusing the power of oppression. People are seeing feminism as, oh yeah, we were oppressed back in the 1950s, so now you have to give me everything I want. That's not what feminism is. Okay, thank you, bye.